Beloved child of God, there comes a moment in every love story when running stops, when avoidance breaks, when the excuses crumble, when the heart can no longer hide behind fear, pride, or unfinished healing. And for someone connected to you, that moment has arrived. You may not see it. You may not hear it. You may not feel it in the natural. But something inside them has shifted. Something they pushed away. Something they denied. Something they buried. Has risen to the surface. And life has been speaking to them in ways they can no longer ignore. Because when God begins working on a person's heart, it doesn't always look like a miracle. Sometimes it looks like discomfort. Sometimes it looks like conviction. Sometimes it looks like losing what they thought they wanted. Sometimes it looks like the sudden realization that they walked away from something pure, something rare, something rooted in purpose. And for the person connected to you, that realization is hitting them deeply, not as guilt, but as awakening. They are starting to see clearly. Where they were emotionally immature, God is growing them. Where they were guarded, God is softening them. Where they were fearful, God is strengthening them. Where they were confused, God is giving clarity. Because love without maturity collapses. But love with truth becomes foundation. There's a scripture that says perfect love casts out fear. Not because fear disappears on its own, but because love challenges fear. Love confronts it. Love matures past it. And that's what has been happening in their heart. For the first time, they are being honest with themselves. Honest about what they feel. Honest about what they want. Honest about the role you played in their healing. Honest about the peace they felt with you. Honest about how your presence awakened parts of them that stayed asleep for years. They're not running anymore. Because running has become exhausting. Hiding has become lonely. And pretending has become unbearable. They are finally stepping into the truth. The truth that connection like yours doesn't happen by mistake. The truth that chemistry alone doesn't produce peace. The truth that God uses people to grow us, shape us, refine us, and reveal where our hearts still need grace. And as we walk through this message today, you will understand why they pulled away, why they couldn't stay still, why they needed space, and why now, in this exact season, something inside them is pushing them forward toward maturity, toward honesty, toward courage, toward love that can finally stand. Before we go deeper, I want to invite you to subscribe, not because of numbers, but because this is a space for people who want to love with wisdom, for people who want to heal with intention, for people who want to understand the spiritual side of relationships. This channel is built for those who feel deeply, who grow intentionally, who believe love is sacred, and who want to walk in purpose, not confusion. Stay with me, because in this teaching, you're going to hear truth that brings peace, truth that brings clarity, truth that brings strength to your heart. And by the end of this message, you will understand something powerful. They didn't stop running because you chased. They stopped because God has been maturing them, aligning them, preparing them. Your story isn't over. And today you're about to see why. Number 1, when avoidance breaks and truth begins. Avoidance is a temporary shelter. Feels safe at first. It feels protective. Feels like control. But over time, avoidance becomes a prison. A place where the truth gets louder. Where conviction grows heavier. Where the heart starts whispering the very thing the mind tried to outrun. There comes a moment when avoidance stops working. When the distractions stop distracting. When the noise goes quiet. And all that remains is honesty. Raw. Unfiltered. Undeniable. That is the moment your person has reached. They tried to convince themselves they didn't care as deeply as they did. They tried to tell themselves they could move on without healing what was wounded. They tried to fill the silence with busyness. But life has a way of circling us back to what is unfinished, especially when it comes to love that carried purpose. When avoidance breaks, truth begins. Not soft truth, not convenient truth, but the kind of truth that brings someone to their knees. The kind that shows a person the gap between who they are and who they are called to become. They're not running anymore because they can't hide behind old patterns. Immature communication, fear of vulnerability, unprocessed pain. All of it has been exposed, not by embarrassment, but by growth. God doesn't shame people into maturity. He grows them into it. And growth requires honesty. Honesty about the times they withdrew instead of communicating. Honesty about the moments they shut down when they felt overwhelmed. Honesty about their fear of being fully seen. Honesty about why loving someone deeply scared them. Honesty about how much they actually felt for you. Avoidance is a coping mechanism. Honesty is a breakthrough. And this is the season where truth is doing the work. Where God is softening what life hardened. Where the heart is finally catching up with reality. Because the truth is, they didn't walk away from you because you weren't enough. They walked because they weren't ready to face themselves. They weren't ready for love that required maturity. Love that demanded growth. Love that reflected their own unhealed places. Your presence held up a mirror. A mirror that showed them what they longed for, but also what they needed to work on. And when love feels that real, it shakes people. It exposes emotional avoidance. It confronts unresolved wounds. It touches places pride tried to bury. When avoidance breaks, a person starts remembering. They remember the peace you brought. They remember the comfort of your voice. They remember the security they felt around you. They remember how being with you felt like breathing. Unforced, uncomplicated, safe. And memory becomes conviction. Conviction becomes clarity. Clarity becomes courage. This is how God works in the heart. Not by forcing, but by illuminating. Not by pushing, but by aligning. Not by controlling, but by calling someone back to truth. When avoidance breaks, a person sees the difference between attachment and connection, between temporary attention and intentional love, between what distracted them and what grounded them. They begin to realize they didn't flee from you. They fled from the responsibility of love, from communication, from transparency, from accountability, from being truly known. But now the hiding doesn't feel like protection. Feels like loss. And the truth doesn't feel like fear. It feels like direction. This is the season where they can't deny what was real. Where they can't pretend the connection was accidental. Where they can't hide behind busyness. Where they can't outrun conviction. Because running from love only works until the heart becomes honest. And their heart, right now, is more honest than it has ever been. Avoidance has broken. Truth has begun. And that truth is pulling them toward maturity, toward accountability, toward clarity, toward you. Not because you pressured them, not because you chased, but because their soul finally stopped resisting what God has been trying to grow inside them. This is the first step, the first shift, the first sign that their heart is waking up. Number 2, when the heart hears what the mind tried to ignore. There comes a moment when the heart becomes louder than the mind. When the excuses lose power. When the story someone told themselves no longer matches what they feel. And this is where your person is right now. For a long time their mind tried to stay in control. It tried to stay logical. It tried to stay detached. It tried to convince them they were fine without you. But the heart has a way of whispering truth that logic cannot silence. At first those whispers feel like memories. Soft, subtle, passing. But memories turn into reminders. Reminders turn into longing. Longing turns into clarity. And clarity turns into conviction. This is the unfolding happening inside them. Not all at once, but slowly, deeply, undeniably. The mind can say, move on, forget, replace, distract. But the heart speaks in a different language. A language built on peace, on resonance, on alignment, on the quiet certainty that something was real. The mind focuses on fear. Fear of vulnerability. Fear of rejection. Fear of intimacy. Fear of responsibility. Fear of repeating old patterns. Fear of losing again. Fear of being fully seen. But the heart focuses on truth. Truth that brings healing. Truth that brings courage. Truth that brings someone back to what matters. And when the heart begins to hear what God has been trying to teach, everything changes. Not in a dramatic instant, but in a steady awakening. The heart begins to see what the mind overlooked. That peace matters more than excitement. That consistency matters more than attraction. That emotional safety matters more than temporary attention. That connection matters more than convenience. And suddenly the things they ignored start to rise. All the little ways you brought comfort. All the ways your presence grounded them. All the conversations that felt real. All the moments when their spirit could rest with you. These things are not small. These things are not accidental. These things are not forgettable. When the heart hears truth, it becomes aware of what it lost. Not because of regret, but because of recognition. Recognition that you were good for their soul. Recognition that you showed love in a healthy way. Recognition that your presence carried grace. Recognition that you offered what their spirit needed. And sometimes the mind is slow to accept what the heart already knows. But God has a way of softening the places that have hardened, of unraveling fear, of revealing what matters through experience and growth. Your person has entered that unraveling. They are starting to feel the weight of the truth, not as punishment, but as awakening. Because there is a difference between knowing something in your mind and feeling it in your spirit. And what they feel now is deeper than thought, deeper than logic, deeper than pride. It is soul-level recognition. They are beginning to see that what they pushed away was the very thing that made them feel seen. They are beginning to see that what they avoided was the exact love that could have matured them. They are beginning to realize that the peace they felt with you was not ordinary. It was alignment. And alignment has a way of echoing, even across time, even across distance, even across silence. This is why they can't ignore it anymore. Not because they suddenly want attention, not because they got lonely, but because the truth has become louder than their fear. The heart is finally hearing what God has been growing inside them. The truth that love requires courage. The truth that connection requires honesty. The truth that healing requires humility. The truth that running delays growth. The truth that depth demands presence. This is the moment where denial fades, where pride softens, where clarity rises, where truth stands still and says, "You can't ignore this anymore." Their heart is waking up. And that awakening is not small. It is the beginning of transformation, the beginning of courage, the beginning of emotional maturity, the beginning of forward movement. Not because they are forced, but because they are finally ready to listen. Number 3, when God uses emptiness to reveal what truly matters. There comes a season when everything someone used to rely on stops working. The distractions lose flavor. The noise becomes tiring. The routines that once numbed the heart become hollow. This is the season of emptiness. And for your person, that season has arrived. Emptiness is not punishment. Emptiness is clarity. Emptiness is the quiet place where God begins to speak to the heart in ways life never could. Because when someone is surrounded by noise, they can ignore what matters. But when God allows the noise to fade, when the mind stops running, when the heart finally sits still, truth rises. This is what has been happening inside them. Life stripped away their false comforts, their emotional hiding places, their substitutions, their distractions. And in that silence they began to feel the weight of what they lost. At first they thought they missed the familiarity. Then they thought they missed the routine. But eventually they realized it wasn't routine they missed. It was you. Your presence. Your warmth. Your capacity to love deeply. Your ability to bring peace to their storm. Your consistency that grounded them. They realized that the conversations they dismissed as simple were actually healing. The kindness you carried so naturally was actually medicine. And the peace they felt with you was actually the presence of God working through connection. Sometimes it takes emptiness for someone to recognize value. Not because they didn't care before, but because they weren't ready to face what that value required of them. When God uses emptiness, He is not taking something away. He is revealing what was there all along. He is removing the illusions, the substitutes, the comforts that kept someone emotionally asleep. And He is allowing them to feel the truth without filters. The truth that you brought stability. The truth that your presence softened them. The truth that your love awakened them. The truth that your spirit helped them feel like they mattered. The truth that what they lost was more meaningful than what they were chasing. And when someone comes face to face with that truth, it humbles them. It breaks down pride. It confronts the part of them that believed they could walk away without consequence. Not as punishment, but as awakening. Some lessons cannot be learned through comfort. Some lessons require emptiness. Because emptiness exposes motives. It reveals what truly holds value. It shows what the heart actually needs. It highlights what the soul is genuinely connected to. This season has forced your person to see the difference between being entertained and being fulfilled, between being distracted and being known, between feeling temporary excitement and experiencing lasting peace. And peace matters. More than they realized, more than they admitted, more than they were mature enough to carry at the time. When life quieted around them, when the people they surrounded themselves with could not offer depth, when the temporary comfort faded, their spirit began to recognize the absence of something real. And that absence pointed straight back to you. Not because you completed them, but because you reflected who they were becoming. You challenged their emotional immaturity without shaming them. You offered a safe space for growth. And their soul felt that, even when their mind wasn't ready to honor it. This is why emptiness is sacred. It is the soil where truth grows. It is the place where God whispers, "Look again. See clearly. Feel deeply. Understand what I was trying to show you." Your person is not just lonely. They are awakened. They are not just missing comfort. They are recognizing connection. They are not just regretting. They are maturing. God uses emptiness to bring revelation, to soften hearts, to break patterns, to reveal what truly matters. And right now, your person is seeing what matters. Not through fantasy, but through clarity. Not through longing, but through truth. They are seeing that what they pushed away was the very thing that brought peace. And that realization is preparing them for the next step. A step toward maturity, toward accountability, toward honesty, toward you. Their emptiness is not the end. It is the beginning of awareness, the beginning of growth, the beginning of change, the beginning of movement. And that movement is guiding them somewhere they can no longer deny. Number 4, when maturity finally meets desire. There is a difference between wanting someone and being ready for them. A difference between desire and maturity. A difference between longing for connection and being able to sustain it. Many people want love, but few are prepared for what real love requires. Because real love requires responsibility, consistency, emotional honesty, patience, sacrifice, humility. Desire alone cannot carry that. Desire alone cannot hold the weight of commitment. Desire alone cannot build a future. Desire is the spark, but maturity is the foundation. And for a long time, your person lived in the space between desire and readiness. They felt the pull. They felt the connection. They felt the peace your presence brought. But they didn't yet have the maturity to match the depth of what they felt. They wanted you, but they weren't ready for what loving you required. Not because you were difficult, but because your presence awakened something higher in them. Something deeper. Something that demanded they grow. And growth is uncomfortable. Growth exposes the places inside us that need healing. Growth reveals the patterns that must be broken. Growth confronts the ego. Growth challenges pride. Growth requires the death of old versions of self. For a while, they avoided that growth. They thought they could outrun accountability. They thought they could escape emotional responsibility. They thought desire was enough to sustain them elsewhere. But desire without maturity eventually collapses. Desire without depth eventually empties. Desire without growth eventually exposes itself. This is the season where their maturity has finally caught up to their desire. Where the work they avoided is now happening within them. Where the emotional gaps they carried are being filled. Where the fears they once hid behind are losing power. Maturity happens slowly. Then suddenly. Slowly through life experiences. Through lessons. Through discomfort. Through reflection. Then suddenly through clarity. Through awakening. Through that one moment where everything becomes undeniable. Your person is in that suddenly moment now. Not because they forced it, but because God prepared their heart over time, teaching them through circumstances, revealing their patterns, breaking their pride, softening their defenses, strengthening the areas that were once weak. Maturity means they can finally admit the truth, that they want partnership, not just passion, that they want safety, not just excitement, that they want depth, not just attention. That they want something real, not something temporary. And real requires work. Real requires vulnerability. Real requires choosing someone daily. Even when fear whispers otherwise, maturity allows them to choose. Where immaturity only allowed them to react, maturity lets them see you, not as an option, but as someone aligned with their growth, their purpose, their healing, their future. Maturity allows them to value what they once took for granted, to honor the peace you carried, to appreciate the depth you offered, to understand the weight of your presence. And maturity brings desire into clarity. Your person doesn't just desire you physically. They desire you spiritually, emotionally, mentally, holistically. They desire the way you bring calm without effort, the way you listen, the way you care, the way you speak life into people, the way you carry yourself with grace, the way your heart reflects God even when life has tried to break it. This is the first time in their life where desire isn't clouded by ego, where emotion isn't interrupted by fear, where longing isn't overshadowed by pride. Maturity is letting them see you clearly, see the depth of who you are, see the truth of what you carried, see the value of what you gave, see the purpose behind the connection. And now, desire is no longer leading them. Wisdom is, clarity is, accountability is, healing is. This is the moment where their heart and their maturity finally align, where their desire is no longer reckless, but responsible, where their longing is no longer confusing, but intentional, where their movement is no longer avoidant, but courageous. They are stepping forward not because they miss you, but because they have grown into the version of themselves that can finally love you well. This is the season where maturity and desire meet, and when those two finally come together, everything changes. Number 5, when God uses delay to prepare the heart. There are moments in life when everything feels paused, not broken, not denied, just paused. You feel the pull of something meant for you. You feel the connection. You feel the promise. You feel the direction. Yet the movement seems slow. The timing feels stretched. And the waiting presses on your spirit in ways you cannot explain. This is the kind of delay God uses, not to punish, but to prepare. Because love that is rushed rarely lasts. But love that is prepared becomes steady, rooted, strong. Your person did not go silent because they lost interest. They did not step back because the connection was wrong. They stepped back because their heart was not ready for the weight of what God was giving them. Delay is one of God's greatest tools. It reveals what impatience hides. It strengthens what fear weakens. It exposes what pride covers. It prepares the heart to receive what it once would have mishandled. Your soulmate needed that delay. Even if it frustrated you. Even if it confused you. Even if it made you question what you felt. They needed time to face the places in themselves they kept avoiding. They needed time to confront the wounds they buried. They needed time to heal from the experiences that shaped their distrust. They needed time to grow into someone capable of loving you with consistency instead of impulse. Delay is not silence. Delay is shaping, reshaping, rebuilding. Delay is the season where God says, "Let me prepare both hearts. Let me align both spirits. Let me clear out what cannot survive the next chapter." While you were busy wondering why things were stalled, God was busy strengthening areas you did not even know were weak in you and in them. Delay softens the heart. It humbles the ego. It quiets the noise. It brings clarity to the surface. Your person spent years reacting instead of reflecting. Years running instead of confronting. Years choosing distraction instead of healing. Years chasing temporary comfort instead of long-term peace. But the delay forced them to face the truth. There is no shortcut to emotional maturity. There is no shortcut to spiritual readiness. There is no shortcut to healthy love. God allowed distance so they could grow without hurting you in the process. So they could face their shadows without projecting them onto you. So they could learn to communicate without shutting down. So they could learn to handle love without sabotaging it. Delay is a classroom. And your person finally paid attention. They started seeing their patterns, their fears, their inconsistencies, the moments they chose flight over honesty, the times they disconnected instead of trusting. The times they pushed away what they actually needed. And slowly, quietly, consistently, God began rewriting their heart. The delay worked on you too. It made you stronger. It made you more grounded. It made you more patient with yourself. It made you more aware of what you deserve. It made you more selective with your energy. It made you more spiritually aligned. You had to learn that your worth was not tied to someone's timing. You had to learn how to pour into yourself, how to trust your intuition, how to stay anchored even when confused, how to hold space without losing your boundaries. The delay carved you into someone who knows how to love without losing yourself, someone who knows how to give without shrinking, someone who knows how to stay open without becoming available to everything. Delay does not destroy what is meant. It strengthens it. It purifies intention. It separates desire from readiness. It shifts love from fantasy into commitment. Your soulmate is not coming back as the same person who left. Delay changed them. God changed them. Life changed them. They are waking up with clearer vision, calmer emotions, more honesty, more courage, more responsibility, more understanding of what love requires. They can now see how their old habits would have hurt you. They can see why God had to pause the connection. They can see how they were not ready for someone with your depth and heart. But now, their spirit feels different. Their choices feel different. Their energy feels different. They are moving with intention, with clarity, with emotional steadiness they did not have before. God does not delay what is meant. God only delays what is not ready. And now, both hearts are finally prepared for what comes next. Number 6. When their spirit can no longer pretend you don't matter. There comes a moment in every connection where pretending no longer works, where distance stops feeling safe, where silence feels heavier than honesty, where running becomes more painful than staying. Your person has reached that moment. For a long time they tried to convince themselves they could forget you, that their life would be easier without the intensity of what they felt, that walking away would bring clarity, that separation would help them reset their emotions. But separation did the opposite. It amplified everything. Because when a connection is spiritual, not just emotional, not just physical, not just circumstantial, the spirit refuses to lie. Your person tried to silence the part of them that loved you, tried to numb it, tried to bury it, tried to distract themselves from it. But the soul does not respond to distraction. The soul responds to truth. And the truth is, you mattered in a way they did not know how to handle. You touched places inside them they had never exposed. You saw through their walls. You read their tone. You felt their shifts. You understood their silence. You made them feel known. And that terrified them. Most people only saw the version they performed. The strong one. The confident one. The distant one. The controlled one. But you saw everything underneath. The exhaustion. The pressure. The fear. The disappointment. The vulnerability they were ashamed to show. You did not look away. And that alone created a bond they could not shake. When they left, they thought your absence would bring relief. Instead it brought conviction. Conviction that they ran from something real. Conviction that they broke connection with someone who genuinely cared. Conviction that they lost the one person capable of seeing their soul clearly. Conviction that their avoidance cost them the peace they always wanted. This is why the separation hurt them more than they admit. Because they were not just losing you. They were losing the version of themselves they became around you. The softer one. The honest one. The open one. The hopeful one. You awakened parts of them they never thought they would feel again. And losing that forced them to confront their reality. Their fear did not protect them. It imprisoned them. Their distance did not give them clarity. It exposed their emptiness. Their silence did not keep things controlled. It made everything louder inside. And the louder it became, the harder it became to pretend you did not matter. They tried to fill the space you left. With distraction. With people. With obligations. With noise. But nothing touched the place you once held. Because connections like yours are rare. They do not fade with time. They sharpen. They intensify. They clarify. Your person is realizing something powerful. You were not a phase. You were not a temporary comfort. You were not a lesson. You were not a moment. You were alignment. You were growth. You were activation. You were the turning point they did not recognize at first. The more they ignore the truth, the more restless their spirit becomes. Because God will not allow them to lose what was meant to elevate them. Not without conviction. Not without awakening. Not without inner transformation. This is why they feel drawn back to you. Why your name keeps entering their thoughts. Why memories keep resurfacing. Why emotions they suppressed are rising again. Why peace only returns when they imagine choosing connection instead of fear. Their spirit is calling them forward. Calling them into courage. Calling them into honesty. Calling them into healing. Calling them into accountability. They are not returning because they feel lonely. They are returning because they can no longer deny the truth. You mattered. You still matter. And you will always matter. Their spirit knows it. Their heart knows it. Their intuition knows it. And now, they are being pulled toward the moment where pretending ends. And truth begins. Number 7. When God pushes them into the kind of clarity that cannot be ignored. There is a kind of clarity that does not arrive gently. It does not whisper. It does not hint. It does not wait for perfect timing. It arrives like a spiritual interruption. Sudden. Undeniable. Uncomfortable. Awakening. Your person has entered that kind of clarity. For months their heart was torn between what they felt and what they feared. Between the comfort of old patterns and the calling of something deeper. Between the safety of emotional distance and the truth of your connection. But God does not allow a soul to stay confused forever. Not when the connection is divine. Not when the bond is meaningful. Not when the timing is shifting. Not when the purpose is calling. God will use silence. He will use restlessness. He will use discomfort. He will use dreams. He will use memory. He will use conviction. And eventually, He gives clarity so strong that pretending becomes impossible. That is where your person is now. A place where clarity is louder than fear. Where truth is stronger than pride. Where longing is clearer than confusion. Where avoidance can no longer carry them. They can feel the shift. They can feel the pull. They can feel the inner pressure to stop running from what was meant to grow them. Because clarity is not just knowing. Clarity is feeling. Clarity is conviction. Clarity is responsibility. Clarity is when their heart finally admits, I was wrong to push this away. I was afraid of the very thing that was meant to heal me. I cannot keep pretending this connection is ordinary. I cannot keep living like this does not matter. Your person is waking up to the truth of your impact. Not emotionally, but spiritually. Clarity is changing that now. God is pushing them toward honesty, toward accountability, toward emotional ownership, toward spiritual awakening. They can no longer lie to themselves about what this connection is. They can no longer downplay how deeply you affected them. They can no longer hide behind excuses. They can no longer pretend their life feels full without you. Because clarity does not just show them what they want. Clarity shows them what life becomes without what God aligned for their heart. And that is the truth they can no longer escape. The truth that keeps resurfacing. The truth that interrupts their thoughts. The truth that wakes them at night. The truth that sits in their chest when they imagine a future without you. You were not random. You were revelation. You were alignment. You were spiritual confirmation. You were the turning point. And clarity has made that undeniable. Your person is stepping into a season where they will have to choose. Not out of pressure. Not out of fear. Not out of panic. But out of truth. Clarity is guiding them. Truth is calling them. And God is pushing them toward the connection they once ran from. There comes a moment in every divine connection where everything finally lines up. Not by force. Not by pressure. But by spiritual timing. By emotional readiness. By clarity that settles into the heart like truth that has been waiting to be spoken. You and your person have been walking through a long season of reflection. A season of awakening. A season of necessary separation. A season where God shaped both of you in ways neither of you fully understood at the time. But nothing was wasted. Not the silence. Not the distance. Not the confusion. Not the longing. Not the lessons that came wrapped in frustration. Every delay strengthened you. Every pause matured them. Every uncomfortable shift prepared the connection for what comes next. This is the turning point. Your person is not returning as the version who ran. They are returning as the version who learned, the version who healed, the version who grew, the version who finally understands why your presence hit them so deeply, why your energy stayed with them, why your absence became unbearable, why the connection refused to fade. They needed clarity. They needed maturity. They needed courage. And now those three pieces are finally settling into place. The confusion they carried, the fear they hid, the avoidance they relied on. It all collapses under the weight of truth they can no longer deny. They know who you are to them. They know what this connection is. They know why their spirit never released you. They know what they want now. And for the first time, they feel ready to step toward it without hesitation. This next chapter will not mirror the last one. The energy is different. The intention is different. The timing is different. This time, they move with purpose, with clarity, with a heart that is ready to honor what God aligned, not run from it. This time, you are not dealing with their fear. You are dealing with their growth. You are dealing with their honesty. You are dealing with the version of them that can actually build something that lasts. You are stepping into a season where love is no longer delayed, where truth becomes visible, where the connection becomes grounded, where emotions become stable, where God brings together what was always meant to reconnect. What comes next is not fantasy. It is alignment. It is maturity. It is divine timing unfolding exactly the way it needed to. The shift is already happening. In your spirit, in theirs, in the space between you. And as this unfolds, stay connected, stay grounded, stay open, and stay tuned. If you want more messages like this, more guidance, more clarity, more spiritual insight, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next revelation that's meant for your heart. Your story is far from over. It is just beginning. And the best part is coming next. Amen.